Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Rivers Edge. I am your host, Kelli Rivers, and Sammy Rivers is here. And today I am excited to have a lifestyle mindset coach, psychotherapist named Colleen Sodano. Colleen grew up in Cape Town, South Africa, but has been living happily in London the past 20 years. Her background is in electrical engineering and was part of a design team designing primary substations and cable routes across Greater London. It taught her invaluable creative problem-solving skills and a sharp attention to detail, skills that she would later find essential in therapy too. Although Colleen enjoyed her work, she held a long-time dream to be of service. The practical, holistic, and evidence-based approach of human givens resonated with her. She retrained as a human given psychotherapist and coach and never looked back. She gets great enjoyment helping people navigate through difficult times or problems and helping them build upon their own resources. Thank you so much for coming here today. I took that from your website, just your background. So that's what I chose.
No, that's absolutely great. I've got two websites. I have a coaching website and I have a psychotherapy website. So that's off my psychotherapy website, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know you had two. Yeah. I just said ColleenSodano.com.
Yeah. It's probably the first thing that comes up because it's probably a much more older, more established website.
I love that though. I love the electricals. I have a job in semiconductor and I work with engineers all day long and electrical engineers. So I was reading that. I'm like, none of my customers, my engineers could ever be a coach. And it's so funny that that's the background that you have both of those skill sets, the left and right brain. And so but you enjoy the coaching much more than the engineering.
Yeah, I mean, there's parts of the old job that I still do miss. I miss being part of a team because obviously working as a coach and a psychotherapist, you really are only working with one person at a time. And also, you haven't got that sort of team spirit type of thing, like being involved in an engineering project would give you. So that part of it, I do actually really miss. I miss being part of a team and delivering on something where you celebrate the win together. I miss that aspect of it, but otherwise, yeah, I would say psychotherapy and coaching is more fulfilling for me, for sure.
Rewarding, I bet. I'm going to put down your other. You see where it says KelliRivers.com. I'm going to add yours in there, so I could put. Which one should I put in there? Which website?
Either one. I mean, my coaching one is a little bit more. It's not really therapy based, but you can put the psychotherapy one. Either one is absolutely fine.
What is the, I only know ColleenSodano.com. What's the other one?
Yeah, the other one is ColleenSodanoCoaching.com. So it's very similar. Yeah.
Make sure I spelled it right. Yeah, it looks good, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's your coaching, and then the other one is, so do you separate coaching and therapy work then?
No, I don't really, but I've just created two websites because my first website, which was just psychotherapy, is very psychotherapy based. And so what I did was, obviously I've been working as a psychotherapist. I'm still registered as a psychotherapist. I still am, I still need to do all my professional development and all of that for my psychotherapy. So I keep all that up to date. However, what happened was I started doing quite a lot of stuff online where I was coming across a lot of people in business, and what they were talking about was more mindset. And so I started working with predominantly women on stuff around mindset, and quite often they feel more comfortable using the term coaching, or they did. And so I kind of started putting a coaching website together based on that, because it's not really straight up psychotherapy. The way that you approach it will be very similar, but the subject matter is different. What they're coming with is much more mindset stuff, how to overcome limitations, mental blocks and stuff like that. And so it's not necessarily, a lot of people think about psychotherapy, they think about it more of people are coming to you if they've got depression or anxiety or trauma or stuff like that. And so a lot of the time it's more people can't differentiate. They like to see a differentiate between the two.
Yeah, because I think because I got my life coaching certificate in 2010, And I did that for a few years, but it was like to get to the root cause of a problem that people are having, you need to like understand where it is. So kind of like it was a blurry line, but in coaching school, they're like, never, ever, ever talk about the past. You talk about moving forward and how to handle things today rather than really going to the root cause. Like, well, I want to go to the root cause.
Yeah, you see, I mean, I'm a solution-focused psychotherapist anyway, and so I am trained more from, I suppose, a coaching perspective to do psychotherapy. However, what I've also been trained is that, yes, you need to look to the future and we need to find solutions, because when we focus on problems, obviously, they grow and we get more problems. However, if there's trauma or anything like that, or patterns that you keep on seeing repeating in your life, then really you need to unhook from those things. And so there is a time and place where it is important to look to the past, not just for the sake of it. It's not like psychodynamic therapy where you are, which is like an analytical approach, psychoanalysis, where you are just delving in the past and looking around there and scratching around. This is, you only go back if you know that there probably is something like a trauma, and then you go back to process that and deal with that. But I use very technique-based stuff to do that. It's not just about talking, because a lot of my training, the psychotherapy that I'm trained in is based in all the human sciences, not just psychology. And so it looks at neuroscience, evolutionary science, pretty much all the human sciences. And so there's a large part of neuroscience as well. And so we know that when you carry on talking about something and getting really emotional about it, you really are embedding that deeper into the neural network. And so it's not a good idea to just talk about stuff from the past endlessly, because you're actually embedding it deeper. But sometimes we need to go and process it.
Right. So then you can let it go.
Yeah.
And it's not such a major part of your life. So by the way, I met Colleen on Clubhouse. I just did a live video short right before ours, Colleen, just telling people, hey, come join the video with Colleen coming up. So Clubhouse is a super cool app. They have all these different rooms you can go in, different topics. And I want Colleen to talk about hers. But how I met her, when my friend Kelli Hamilton told me about the app, which I didn't even know about Colleen until 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, this is so cool. And I found this one just popped up on the phone. It said fear of public speaking. And I have a fear of public speaking. I've been terrible at it my whole life. And I told my story on the Clubhouse app that last week, I think it was. And Colleen was one of the panel speakers. And she was giving advice on what to do. And I really liked her. She had lovely energy. So I went and texted her on Instagram. And that's how we came today to get the interview going. But her advice to me was, it's because mine isn't necessarily just public speaking. It's about having attention on me. So it's the fight or flight mode. You go in, I go in when I have attention on me. And she was saying, that's the root cause to address, is having the attention. Why do I have that fear of attention on me? And that's how we came to be today then. So that's great advice though, right? So it's not, because I've done all the tricks of the trade, the deep breathing, focus on what you want the public speaking to be like. None of it has ever worked. None of it. And I've done all of it. I'm 52 years old. I've done it. I've been through it. And, but I still have that though. I mean, not nearly as intense as I used to, but I still have that fear, the fight or flight come into mode whenever I have attention on me. So like, what do you tell someone who has that? Like, how do you, when someone's been working on the same issue over and over again, like, and it's just not clearing 100%?
Yeah. So the thing is that, if it's the way I like to explain it, or where you can see it working more clearly, is something like a phobia. So, we can get people can get some really strange phobias, like of buttons and cotton wool, and really strange phobias. People they get these strange phobias, and on a conscious level, that button or that piece of cotton wool is not going to harm you, or that little mouse, or if you dangle your feet in the pool, if you have a fear of deep water or whatever, on a conscious level that thing is not going to harm you in any way. But that's your conscious mind. But what happens is we have these two pathways of fear. So we have the first pathway is very, very fast, but because it's so fast, it can sometimes be inaccurate. And so what it does is the first pathway goes to the unconscious part of your brain. the part of your brain called the limbic system. It's where the amygdala is, and that's where your fight and flight response gets triggered from. So every bit of information that you are receiving, be it smell, sound, touch, whatever it is, everything goes to that part of your brain first, the unconscious part of your brain, really, really fast. And so then afterwards, and then it basically, your brain goes, well, what do I understand about this smell, this feeling, this thing I'm seeing, whatever. If you've got a template stored, yes, basically, because our brain is a pattern matching organ. If you've got a pattern stored that thing that you're smelling is dangerous, like the smell of smoke. Oh, okay, I'd better get out of here. It will immediately then fire off the fight and flight response, because it's got that sound or that smell or whatever it is, has got it stored as dangerous. So it does a pattern match there first. Of course, if it hasn't got anything stored about that thing being dangerous, then it won't fire off the fight and flight. Only hundreds of a second later, I mean, as I say, it's hundreds of a second later, but it is later, does it go down the second pathway, and that is to our conscious brain to do a more detailed analysis and to go, oh, actually, that was just the smell of toast burning. It wasn't actually a fire. But by then you already had been alarmed. You know what I mean? And it's the same as like if you're walking down the street or in the forest and you see at the corner of your eye something that maybe resembles a snake. You're jumping out the way, and then you're looking and going, oh, okay, it's only a stick. But then by that point, your heart's pounding. You're in the fight and flight response already. And so it's a bit like what you're saying here about the thing about attention. Something has happened in your life at some point where you felt very uncomfortable, where attention was given to you. It could have been, let's say hypothetically speaking, maybe you were at school and you stood up to present your project and all the kids laughed at you because you tripped on your way to the thing, or you felt really that all the eyes were on you, and plus it was a horrible experience because you felt ridiculed in some way. The brain then stores that as a threatening situation, and it's about similarity. So whenever you maybe stand up to speak in front of people, there's enough of a similarity. It's standing up in front of people is dangerous, and so then it will fire it. So something with you with attention has happened, that it's stored this in the unconscious, that this is a threat. And so whenever attention is put onto you, it fires off the fight and flight, because it's going down the first pathway. You consciously know this isn't a threat, but it's going to that first place first, then it's firing it off. So no amount of conscious thinking. That's why people can't talk themselves out of phobias. You have to.
Yeah, the deep breathing doesn't work.
Yeah. You have to, because it can calm the system down. The deep breathing is brilliant to sort of calm the alarm system down, but the alarm system's been triggered anyway. All you're doing there with the deep breathing is calming a system that's already been alarmed. But you don't want to be alarmed in the first place. You don't want the alarm to be going off. And so you really have to get into the unconscious part of your brain where these patterns are stored and scramble those patterns. It works the same for anything to do with fear or trauma or anything like that. It's going and getting into the unconscious. The unconscious works in symbols, patterns, images. That's the language of the unconscious. And so you have to sort of get in there. And the best way to do it is forms of doing visualization techniques that sometimes trick the brain into processing some of the stuff that's stored as threats when they're not, and scrambling some of the patterns so your brain doesn't pattern match to the thing that is stored. So really that's the type of work that I do a lot with people.
Oh, what does that mean, scrambling the pattern?
So, if you've got, like, for instance, if you've got a pattern, so if your pattern that you have stored is standing up in front of people is a dangerous thing, because when you were 6, you stood up, presented your project, and everybody laughed at you, and you went into a stress response, a panic. That's what we call a pattern. It's stored as a pattern in your brain. And so what you want to do is you want to then scramble that in a way so that when you are in a new situation where you're now speaking in front of people, it doesn't pattern match to that old original incident. So the fight and flight doesn't fire off. And so that's what I mean about scrambling it, that it doesn't match to that. You need to kind of, in a way, confuse the brain that it doesn't match to that old pattern that's there. You can replace it with other stuff in the unconscious.
you create what the outcome that you want to happen, and you visualize that.
Yeah, it's not just about visualizing the outcome. That is one way. Because of course the unconscious doesn't understand the difference between real or imagined events. And so if you keep on imagining something going really well that you're fearful of, then the unconscious believes that it has gone well as many times as you imagined it, because it doesn't understand the difference. And so you start replacing it and start priming your brain for a new reaction. But in terms of really scrambling the patterns, I have a technique that I use. It's called the rewind technique. And it's about kind of really sort of like, you can't really remove that memory, because that is a memory, but it's about sort of mixing it up in the unconscious, that when the new situation doesn't match to it, doesn't pattern match to it. And so it's a technique where you kind of do something where, I won't give you the whole rundown of the technique, but it's pretty much a technique which it uses visualization, but it's also going backwards through the stuff, which really confuses the amygdala. The other problem with anything that is trauma-based is when we have a trauma, what happens is the memory doesn't get contextualized. And so we know this from neuroscience. If you put someone in a brain scan and you say, okay, recall your traumatic memory, and you in the brain scan, the part of the brain that gets activated is the amygdala. And that's not where memory should be coming from. It's kind of got stuck there. And so according to your unconscious brain, it still believes the trauma is happening because it hasn't been moved across to where memory should be coming from, which is the hippocampus. And so the hippocampus is the place where memory should be coming from. It comes from many places, but mostly the hippocampus. And the hippocampus gives it a tag, so it gives it context. Like, it was raining, it was a Tuesday, you were wearing a red t-shirt. It tags it so that the brain understands that it's over. So when we experience a trauma, often this doesn't happen. The contextualizing part doesn't happen, and it stays stuck in the amygdala. And so part of the technique I use is about tricking the brain to contextualize the memory and move it across into the correct part of your brain. And so your brain understands it's over. And that's what kind of PTSD and all of that kind of stuff is about, where your brain still believes the thing is happening. And so you get all these flashbacks. Plus, it's very difficult sometimes when people have experienced a lot of trauma to be able to give a coherent story, because sometimes, like say a rape victim or someone who's been attacked, sometimes then when they're giving a report about what happened, people will go, gosh, their story doesn't quite tie up. And that's because when the memory is coming from the amygdala, it doesn't work in a linear way. It hasn't been contextualized. And so this story can be all over the place. It could start here and then it goes back to there. And then because it hasn't been contextualized, so it's operating in a linear way. And so that's why sometimes, especially people who've been through a huge amount of trauma, sometimes their story sounds a bit disjointed. And it's because it hasn't been contextualized and moved to the correct part of the brain. Yeah.
Mary has can you see on the screen? Mary says, presently the mass thing that takes her back to a pillow being pressed on her face when she was a little girl.
Yes.
Was that something that got stuck in her amygdala then?
Yeah. So that is the type of thing that then every single time you put on a mask, it's about the similarity. Anything probably that comes near your face, you probably don't like. It's enough of a similarity that it can trigger that same response, because, as I say, it's about similarities. Because if it was all about exact matches, so if you think, like, if we come into the world, we don't know anything, we have to learn what everything is. And so once we get the template or the pattern for glass, we understand what every glass is. If we had to know store what every glass is, it's too rigid. So it's about patterns. And that's where the error the margin for error can come in, because sometimes we'll be triggered into something being a threat when it's not. It's just that there's something similar about something where there was a threat, if you know what I mean, and then it fires it off. And so that's where sometimes these phobias and these type of misfiring can happen, because there's something in the situation that's similar that your brain is picking up to that was a threat.
Right. Does it take a long time to release these phobias, these fears that are stuck in the amygdala?
No, it doesn't actually. It's not doesn't take long at all. It depends how much people have, but generally, if there's an incident, like say someone has a fear of flying, or what Mary's saying about the pillow and everything like that, you can do that in a session.
Wow, so I took an NLP class in January. And this girl did have a fear of going up and down the elevator, and they did the exercise with her, and it was like what you said, it was confusing the brain, so it didn't wasn't I something stuck in her amygdala. But she within 15 minutes she went and rode up the elevator up and down. We all walked out of the classroom, watched her go up and down the elevator, and she was fine.
The important thing with these things is what you need to do is, it's like, for instance, if someone came to you with a fear of flying or something like that, the important thing is that they go and they do the thing quite quickly. If you leave someone came to you and did the fear of flying, and then you only flew 6 months later, it's too long. You need to go and fly like the next week.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, like sometimes when I'm in the ocean, I have a fear of drowning. So I would need to go get in the ocean.
Yeah. So you need to do the techniques, do the various things, and then you need to go and face the thing, because basically what you're doing, the brain has to take on that new learning. So you're creating like a clean slate almost, and then you go and take on the new learning that this thing isn't dangerous, and then it stores it that this thing is actually safe. So you need to go do the thing. So your brain can take on the new learning quickly.
And do you have to repeat that over and over, or just doing that one time?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's good if you did, because then it's just really, puts it in deeply. But it's not as if you need to go, right, I need to get in the ocean now every day for the next month. It's fine. You could just go do it a few times and just really seal that in. I mean, obviously, the more the better, that you go then and reconfirm that you basically making that new learning that the brain is taking on stronger and stronger and stronger every time you do it, and you don't have that reaction.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And Mary has a question here again. What about repeat from past incarnation? People reappear in present life. So I guess maybe it's the question is things that are coming in from past lives.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, I'm not, yes, there is stuff with past lives and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm also a clinical hypnotherapist, so I do regression therapy. I think sometimes I'm not sure entirely, and I've done it myself. I've gone into regression therapy where I saw a past life. I'm not convinced it was. I'm convinced, once again, it was patterns and metaphors that helped me. But I'm not necessarily sure it was a past life. What can come up for people sometimes is stuff about ancestral trauma. And so what you're seeing is not necessarily a past life, but actually ancestral trauma from an ancestor that you are then seeing, because there is a thing, I don't know if anybody's heard of epigenetics, which is, it's a new science, and there's more and more studies within epigenetics, that it understands that we can inherit certain fear and trauma from our ancestors. It can pass down in a line through the non-coding side of our DNA, the RNA, the non-coding RNA can be passed down there. And so sometimes when I've done, to me, it doesn't really matter as long as the person is being healed and is getting better. It doesn't matter. Is it a past life? Is it an ancestor? What is it? But whatever appears, sometimes people will do, when we're doing some of the techniques, I do another technique, which is called the affect bridge, which is about going back to root patterns and finding the root to something. Because sometimes we can carry a feeling around with us, like maybe it's a feeling of never fitting in, or feeling like, what's the point? I'll never, for me, I had one, which was what the point? I'll never be chosen. Whenever I was up for selection, I won't go through the whole story, but it was about something that happened to me when I was about 6 years old. I didn't know that. And I did the technique to take me back to find the root pattern of where this was coming from. Some people, what might happen with some people is it goes beyond and something comes up where it's not them. And then I do wonder, is that something to do with ancestral inheritance of a trauma? Because that does occasionally happen, with a memory, or something will pop up while we're doing the technique that's not actually a memory of theirs.
Well, I think my fear of water is from my grandmother, because she has a massive fear of water, massive. And I love getting in the water, but I think I inherited it from her.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, it doesn't mean it's necessarily passed down in there. Or sometimes it's just, if someone around you is very fearful of something, then, especially you're a child, that gets programmed into you. It's more about it's been conditioned. It's not your fear, but the fear has been conditioned into you.
Yeah, her fear has been conditioned.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. Mary, I don't know. Mary said you hit on a nerve. I don't know what that is. Would you care to expand, Mary? Victoria says, I had a therapist help me rewire my brain. One thing I like about your method, the way you're talking, Colleen, is it feels like it's not this woo-woo, let's just talk forever and hope you feel better tomorrow. It's like there's a proven method, right, to your madness. There's a method that works, that helps people. If there's a scientifically proven method that works. Whereas therapy before, like you go in and you talk, this is old school days, right? You go in and you talk to a therapist about your problems, you go home and you never really got anywhere. Someone just listened to you complain about your problems.
Yes. And not only that, but you can end up having then issues with people you've never had issues with. Suddenly you've got an issue with your sister because you've delved into stuff that what happened to you when you were 10 and your relationship, and suddenly now you have an issue with your sister where there never was an issue. Sometimes it can actually cause more problems.
Yeah. Crazy.
So, yeah. But that's a very different approach. That's based in psychoanalysis. That's a psychodynamic approach to therapy. That's not the way I'm trained. I am a solution-focused therapist. And as I say, the school of therapy I've trained in is actually very anti that type of therapy, because they believe that it will just embed it deeper into your neural. It's not helping, because it's, what you focus on grows. And so if you're focusing on your problems for the sake of focusing on them, it'll be hard to see anything else. And plus, then, where attention goes, energy flows and neural connection grows. And so you literally are making those neural connections deeper and deeper the more you're focusing on it. And the more emotional you get when you're speaking about the stuff, the emotions are also the thing that embed the thing in deeper. So, it's great for context. So I do speak about the past with my clients. It's not as if I don't, but it's for context. And then we're going to do things around it, like some of these techniques. But we don't need to be speaking about it for 3-4 weeks or months or whatever. Let's tell me about what happened. And then, okay, right, I've got the context. Now let's do the stuff.
I love it. I love it. It feels so clear cut, which I'm totally on board with. So I didn't finish Victoria's comment. Once I realized the pattern in my triggers, I could talk myself out of thinking irrationally. Honestly, took less than a year, and I feel wonderful. So in that case, it sounds like it was something she had to practice over and over again.
I mean, the thing is, when you're talking about rewiring your brain, so, there's the everybody's heard of the classic thing of, it takes 21 days to form a habit. I don't know if you've heard that. The thing, 21 days, it's the thing that goes around. People say, it's 21 days to form a habit or break a habit or all that kind of stuff. And it's not, it's not 21 days.
What would you say?
Sorry?
Is it like 6 weeks? What is it?
No. So on average, according to the research, on average, it's 66 days. So some people may take less, some people may take 120 days, but on average, it's about 66 days. And what that is, the 66 days is how long it takes to grow a new neural network when you're really doing something and focusing on something, because you need to grow a new pathway when you create a new habit or you learn something new. You need to grow a new pathway. And so that's about the average to really embed a new pathway in. Or if you're changing your focus and you're not going to go down a certain pathway anymore, then it's going to take a while to delete that neural pathway. It's not going to happen overnight. And so the idea with 21 days, it actually came from a plastic surgeon in the 60s who wrote a book. He became a psychologist as well, but he wrote a book where he said on average, it took about 21 days before the patient got used to their new face, their new nose or whatever. And it just became a thing that people went, okay, well, 21 days to form a new anything. And that's where it comes from. So it's like, it's not true. It's not really it wasn't based on any science. It was just this plastic surgeon of what he observed. in his patients.
Oh, wow. Do you have a common, let me fix my light here real quick. Do you have a common issue that people come with? Like a problems, like someone, well, I'll let you answer that one first. Is there one common thing that people come to you with?
Not really. I mean, you know what, the thing that I do a lot with people is, you know, there will always be some sort of block or some, you know, everybody's got like, you know, some sort of trauma. And, you know, trauma doesn't have to be some massive thing like you were attacked one day walking through the park. You know, it doesn't have to be that. Trauma can be accumulative. It can, you know, so there's always something to do some of these things about releasing some of the memory, some of the emotion that's attached to the memory. And so I suppose people have what may be common is sort of everybody has some sort of emotional baggage that they're holding on to. And so it just will be different for everybody, but there will always be some sort of emotional baggage to release first, some sort of limiting beliefs of some sort as well to break through. You know, imposter syndrome is quite a big thing. I work a lot with that as well. Those are quite common things. Imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, imposter syndrome really is the fear that you're not as good or capable as people think you are. At any moment, someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, I'm so sorry, we made a terrible mistake. You shouldn't be doing this job, or we shouldn't have chosen you to do this speech or whatever, or for this interview. You don't really know what you're talking about. So yeah, it's just this worry that, you know, this fear that people are going to find you out, that you're not quite as good or capable or skilled, or you believe that you got to where you are out of luck. You're at the right place at the right time. It's not really because of your ability. And so quite a lot of people do feel that any moment it's like, oh gosh, they're going to find out I'm not really that good. I mean, you know, very talented people experience this. You know, Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook, she's written about imposter syndrome. Meryl Streep, when she won her first Oscar, she thought that they were going to knock on her door and tell her, sorry, we made a mistake. You don't really know how to act. That's terrible. Yeah, I know. Maya Angelou wrote 11 books, and she still had those feelings that actually were going to say, sorry, you don't really know how to write. So we made a mistake giving you all those awards for your writing. You know, it's quite a common thing, especially for actually very able and skilled people. You know, are you in good company if you do experience those feelings?
How do you resolve those feelings?
How do you resolve them? So, you know, imposter syndrome is quite a big topic. And so really what it comes down to, there are 5 different types of imposters. And really when I say types, I mean 5 different main categories of how someone who is experiencing imposter syndrome type feelings, how they view and measure competency. So it's really competency types. It's how you measure your competency. And with every imposter, their rule book that they have created unknowingly, and often it runs on an unconscious level, their rule book. Their rule book is usually unrealistic, unattainable. No mere mortal will ever be able to achieve those rules that you've set about what makes you competent. And so they always feel like they're failing in some way because the competency rules are way too unrealistic. But they don't even realize maybe that that's what they've done. And so they're always feeling like they're under-delivering and failing somehow, which makes them feel that they're competent, which then makes them think someone is going to tell them that they're not competent and they should go. But nobody else sees them that way.
Right, but they live in that.
So we really have to find out what a competency type we are, and then we can rewrite that rule book. But you first have to, you know, be aware of your type, so to speak.
Okay, what if someone has a habit that they have or an addiction, something that's not serving them in life, and they don't have any idea how to resolve it? What would be the first step? Like, just pick one that, what if someone isn't happy in life? They do the 8 to 5 job, they come home, they don't know how to change, they don't know what to shift in order to make their life better. Like, what would be the first step?
So I would say if somebody's feeling not, you know, happy or content within their life, then I would say that they are probably they're probably having an issue around their emotional needs. And so we have, 9 fundamental emotional needs that needs to be met. In some ways, it's similar. If anybody knows Maslow's hierarchy, it's similar, but it's not quite that, and it's not in order of hierarchy. All the emotional needs are just as important, all 9. And so I would say probably somewhere that person is not getting some of their emotional needs met well. And so it'd be looking at where that could be. Potentially there would be an issue there. One of our emotional needs, of course, is to have meaning and purpose in our life. Potentially there could be something around meaning and purpose, but it could be something else. It could be something like we have a need for status. And so say you are going to your job. And when I say a need for status, I don't mean like being the president of America or the prime minister of England. I mean that you are valued and appreciated. So even if you're a janitor in a school, when they do their health and safety report, they call you in because you are a valued, important member of staff. And of course, they would call you in with the health and safety report because you're the janitor. And so you feel hugely valued. They appreciate you. And so if you're going into a job every day where you have no appreciation or you're not valued, that is going to make you feel pretty lousy. And that emotional need is not being met then. We also have an emotional need to feel like we have autonomy and control in our life. And very often when we are in corporate jobs, we don't have autonomy because the decisions are made so high up. And even if you're in middle management, you're not really making decisions. You probably don't make any decisions. You get told how to manage the staff and what decisions are coming from above. And so there's been lots of studies around that. Certainly in the UK, many years ago, there was a study called the Whitehall study with 10,000 civil servants. And the people who were the most stressed were the ones in middle management. The people at the top who you thought would have the most cortisol in their blood and be the most stressed, they were making all the decisions. They were fine. It was the middle management that felt the most, not content, not happy. So it'd be looking at stuff like that because it's not necessarily, that would have to be examined. Where exactly is the problem? It could be stuff with emotional needs. It could be that you don't feel on purpose. And so that would be the first place that I would start, because it might mean you don't want to necessarily go and start a business or change your life completely. It might just be about tweaking some of those emotional needs and finding ways to get that met so that you find that contentment within yourself and that meaning. But otherwise, it could be that you're really not on purpose at all. And so it's finding how to get that. So that would be the first place I would start with someone. But also, it's an awareness as well. But it could also be fear. It could be something around you want to go do these things, but you're just too fearful to do it. And so then we would have to work with where's that fear coming from. So it depends on how it presents. I would only know when I really delved in with the person.
Yeah, by asking the right questions and getting to the bottom of it.
Yeah, because it could be many things why they're not feeling or content, or they're feeling their life is sort of, lackluster or whatever. There could be many reasons for that.
Is the work you do considered NLP or no?
No. So a lot of people do say to me when I speak about some of the stuff, they say, oh, have you studied NLP? I haven't studied NLP. It's just that NLP, a lot of it is also based on the understanding of the brain. Right. And so when we speak, it's just neuroscience. NLP is drawing on some of the neuroscience. And so some of it might sound similar. Plus some of the techniques that I use could be seen as similar to some NLP techniques, not all of them, of course. And so there can be some things that look similar, but I had no idea until people said to me, gosh, that sounds a bit like NLP. I thought, oh, does it? I didn't realize, but so I think there are similarities.
Okay, let me see. Someone wrote a question or a comment here. Jeff was saying, surely you can break a habit within a session if you're doing strong enough pattern interrupts.
Yeah, I mean, you can break habits. You can get it started to break the habits, and yes, absolutely, a pattern interrupt. However, to grow the new neural circuit is going to take a certain amount of time. So, that's the issue with it, and Jeff is saying as an NLP trainer, yeah, you can break things, but you're not going to grow a new neural circuit in a day. It's impossible. So really to reinforce and get that neural circuit that is going to facilitate or sort of hold that new habit will take a while to really embed.
What about if someone meditated and did try to change themselves through that way, through meditation?
Yeah. So meditation and doing mental rehearsal, is amazing. So mental rehearsal, sports people use mental rehearsal all the time, where they get to see themselves doing the thing that they want to win or whatever. Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer, puts a lot of his success down to visualization. Of course, Usain Bolt has spoken about using it. Top athletes do use visualization. And the idea of what I was originally saying about the unconscious not understanding the difference between real or imagined events. So you really are starting to almost grow that new neural network just by visualization alone. And neuroscience backs that up. Neuroscience does show, because there's been studies on this, like two groups of people. One group did a piano exercise physically for a month. The other group did it in their mind. So they imagined doing the piano exercise. And so every time we learn something, we grow a new neural circuits, our brain map changes. And so they mapped the brains before this thing and they did it afterwards. And both groups grew the same neural circuits. And so just by imagination alone, we can start growing new neural circuits to create a new behavior. But the other thing that it does, which is super important, it allows you to be able to take into the sort of the theater of your mind, if you like, all the different eventualities. So for instance, if you are nervous about giving a talk, you could go and visualize it. Don't just visualize everything going perfectly. Visualize the fact that somebody gave you a question that was challenging, or all the different different eventualities of the situation. So you've taken it, you've rehearsed it from every single angle, so that nothing surprises you, nothing throws you when you go to do the thing. And that's what sports people do. So a tennis player will imagine every spin that comes their way, everything, that the wind was different, this was different, every single type. They don't just imagine themselves playing a good game of tennis. They imagine all the different scenarios of how the ball could come to them and see themselves doing it. And so that's the way, you really kind of can start to change yourself by seeing yourself differently. It's also about changing the inner identity and the beliefs that we carry about ourselves, which is about those early beliefs that get programmed into us between 0 and 7 or 8 years old.
So could that, just through the meditation alone, change those childhood fears?
No, it's not. No, meditation alone is not going to necessarily take the fears away, but it's certainly going to change the structure of your brain in terms of the alarm response. It's it's going to make you a much calmer person. It's going to basically make you less reactive, so that you're not getting emotionally hijacked as much, which is coming from that the limbic system, where all our emotions are generated from. You'll become more sovereign to that part of your brain, be in more control of that part of your brain. Wouldn't take necessarily your childhood fears away or change your inner identity as such, but you can do that work within meditation about the affirmation, seeing yourself differently and all of that. But in terms of reprogramming the brain with different images, patterns, symbols, all that kind of stuff, then you need to do a few other things as well.
Okay. All right. Jeff has another question. Can you use change in state? What does that mean, in state? Like while you're in
what it means. I mean, the way you can change state, the quickest way to change state,
the emotional state you're in? Is that what that means?
So talking about emotions. So say you are having a panic attack, the quickest way to change any type of state you're in, like say you're in a state of fear or you're in a state of anguish or something, the quickest way to change states is or through visualization, closing your eyes, going back to a time perhaps when it was a really happy memory, perhaps it was, I don't know, if the birth of your child was a pleasant, happy experience, because some people, the birth of a child can be a traumatic experience. So if that was a happy day, go back to that, whatever it is, where you can take yourself back to a time in your mind's eye to something that was emotionally very empowering or positive. And there's lots of stuff that we can do about seeing how that works. There's a thing called biofeedback, where you can actually attach little sort of like a reader on you with your heart rate, so your pulse, your blood pressure, all of that. And it can show you how, especially with people with anxiety and stuff, by just doing that, taking 2-3 minutes out to do a visualization that you prepped for, it will change your internal state. Literally, your physical stats will change.
Okay. Yeah. He clarified emotional state. Thank you, Jeff. So like with Mary, as she's a good example, she was told she was rotten from the inside. And Mary, I'm assuming because you're writing these comments that you still feel this pain from childhood, and with the pillow over your face and all of this. So for Mary, your advice to Mary would be what? On how to release all of these past emotions?
So, that is not great for Mary that she was told that, because some people, they can feel terrible about themselves, but it's not because someone's told them anything terrible. But Mary, on the other side of the coin, and there's lots of people who've also experienced this type of emotional abuse like that, being told you rotten, told you bad, or you're never going to amount to anything, you're useless. Lots of people get told that's awful. So part of that is also doing some of these techniques where because that is trauma. You've been traumatized. You've had emotional abuse, which is trauma. And so it really is going back to the original stuff I was speaking about how to release the trauma and how to move it. So these are never going to be pleasant memories for you, Mary. It's never going to be pleasant. However, you can release the emotion that's attached to those memories. So there will be memories, but you can be much more sort of subjective about it, and not get so every time you think about it. Sometimes when we still have emotion attached to that, we get pulled straight back in, and you feel all those emotions every time you remember it or think about it. And so what we can do is help you to remove the actual emotion, that when you think about it, you don't get triggered back into those same feelings. And that is through that stuff I was talking about at the beginning, about doing the techniques around trauma.
Okay. And so what is your Clubhouse group called?
So I run a club on Clubhouse. It's called Women in Mind. It's a room that I run every morning. It's at 9 a.m. UK time, so it's probably a bit too early for people in the States. Although saying that, I do get quite a lot of Americans that are either up really late if they're on the Pacific Coast, or they're up really, really early. I mean, I have this one lady who comes in and she's in there. It's like 4 a.m. for her, and it's like, what are you doing in here? But anyway,
I joined at 4 a.m. I can do 4 a.m. I can't do 1 a.m.
Yeah. So it's really quite, but so I do get some Americans in there, but it's at 9 a.m. UK time. And generally we discuss mindset, we discuss personal development, transformation, and those are the type of topics. It's often a lot of women in the room because the club's called Women in Mind, but of course we do welcome men. It's just that often we are speaking from a woman's perspective, because it is also very much about women championing women and women sort of, helping each other move forward in the best way and giving them the resources to do that. But I do get a lot of men in there because, there's a lot of men who are wanting to champion women and see the problems, especially when it comes to their daughters and the legacy for their daughters and even their wives, So you do get quite a lot of men in there wanting to join in the conversation.
Oh, nice. And do you have a panel also like the other room did I was in?
Yeah, I do. I have a panel. So it's myself, and there's anywhere between whoever can come that day, anywhere between, say, 3 of us to sometimes there's even as much as, 7 of us, 8 of us, if everyone's in, because I have a bit of a panel and it mix and matches who's ever available that day.
Oh, okay. I just wondered how that works. Like, how do they get all these panel people together? Because some days they're there, some days they're not. Is it just whoever shows up?
Yes, I have my panel, or I have my moderators, and I think must have about 8 or 10, I think. And then it's whoever can make that, because not everyone can make every day. And so it's who can make it. So, on a really bad day, maybe there's only 3 of us, but then on a really good day, maybe there is as much as 8 of us, when they're all in. And so when we have a back channel as well, or we have a WhatsApp group, and so people generally say, I can make it today or I can't make it. It's the same for Andy, the room that we met in. It's exactly the same for him. He has a back channel and we tell him if we can make it or if we can't.
Okay. He seems like a cool dude, Andy. He is.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's really great. I love that room. I really love moderating in that room. I love where he runs his room as well. That's why I really enjoy moderating in it. It's a really well-run room.
See, I don't have any experience with any other room. He's the only room I've been in, and I think it's really well-run too. I love it.
Yeah. Not all of them are as good as Andy's. Andy's is a good room. It's a very organized room, and I really like it. I mean, it depends on what you want, because there's some rooms. What I don't like is, I don't know, some rooms run this popcorn style type room, which I don't like. A popcorn style is you have a whole bunch of people on the stage. Sometimes the stage is it's full. It's like there's 30, 40 people on the stage. Oh, and then it's like popcorn, whoever wants to like chat. And so there's people talking over each other, and can I come in on that? And it can be just a bit disordered. And I stay away from those type of rooms. There's a lot of rooms like that as well.
So when someone's a speaker in the speaker room, can anyone unmute I guess you have the ability to unmute yourself then. So they can talk. As long as you're on the stage. Yeah, as long as you're on the stage, you can then unmute yourself and talk. And so the other thing that, because I've been on Clubhouse for quite a while and I've run a lot of rooms, I'm starting to notice more trolls as well. And so people will come up to the stage and start swearing or shouting or whatever. And so I'm very careful now. If anybody hasn't got a bio and they don't have a photograph, and I can't at least see that they've got an actual bio, that they're a proper person, maybe also connected to an Instagram, I don't allow them onto the stage. Oh, okay. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. Of course, trolls are going to show up.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Yeah. I love the whole concept of it. You need to do one later or earlier.
I know. Maybe, it's sort of a mid-afternoon one, maybe even something more like this type of time. Yeah,
because I would totally join in. I love all this stuff. It's so fun.
I do sometimes run a room about imposter syndrome. I used to run that quite regularly. Just me. I don't have a panel for that. And I just would show up, and sometimes a bunch of people would show up, and sometimes there would only be 5 of us in the room. But I used to really enjoy doing it. So I'm going to maybe start running those again as well, those imposter syndrome rooms. It's certainly not as big as my morning room. My morning room gets quite big.
I should do a personal empowerment room, and then you can be one of the panel speakers.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd love that. Anytime.
And Jeff, you can be have your NLP room, which he may already have. I don't know. Okay, so what if people want to find you on Clubhouse? Is it Colleen Sodano they search for?
So I'm just under my name, at Colleen Sodano. They can find me on Clubhouse there. I'm also on LinkedIn, also obviously under my name. And I'm on Instagram as Detox Your Mind. I've made that account so long ago, and I called it Detox Your Mind. It's not really so much on brand anymore. I'd love to change the name, but sometimes followers don't like that when you change the name. I think I might still, but it's as Detox Your Mind. That is my Instagram. Sorry?
I love that name.
Oh, do you? Yeah. A lot of people say to me, that's why you Detox Your Mind, because all my other stuff is obviously just my name. But it's a really old account.
No, I love it. But if you want to change it, it's up to you, whatever resonates with you, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's what I'm known as on Instagram anyway. So I might just leave it.
All right. So Jeff likes it too. Great name.
Oh, good. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
NLP approved.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's funny enough, because when I did the account, it was back in the days when I was actually very into actual physical detox as well. And I 100%, I still believe it, and I'm still into detox, but I 100% believe that part of it is, we can eat the most healthy diet in the world, the most pristine, lifestyle in terms of exercise and diet. But if our thoughts are toxic, that is going to cause our health to suffer as well. And I think there's an emotional component to all disease anyway. And so we have to make sure that we detox the mind and clear the mind of all that toxicity. And so that was really back in the day when I created it. That's where I was coming from.
God, it's so true. It's so, you got to do the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual. I mean, you have to, do you come in with people that they have 4 of them but are missing the one? Then maybe they mentally great, but they're wrong diet. Does that ever happen?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. You know, you get people which are prepared to do all that work, and you know, the talk therapy, the mental work, whatever, but then they're not necessarily living a most healthy lifestyle in terms of what they're consuming in their diets, or they're not exercising ever, or, you know, there can be that. And equally the same as you get really fit, amazingly fit and healthy people in their diet, but they're suppressing all their emotions.
Right. Yeah.
No,
Then they drop dead. They're like, wait, they're so healthy, and they're in the gym all the time.
Yeah, or they get some major health issue, you know, or some sort of disease, but they go, my God, but they're the healthiest person, because there is a emotional component to all disease. It's about the whole environment, not just about the food. It's about everything we consume, and that's our thoughts as well. If our thoughts are toxic, that's going to cause a problem in the body. And I mean, I could speak about that for hours, because, you know, it's also sort of the way disease shows up often in our body. The disease is a symbol. It's a symbol of a deeper emotional issue, and often it's metaphoric. So the way it's, you know, if you could present with like a, I don't know, liver issue, a skin issue, it's also often relates to the emotion in a metaphorical way. Like if it's your skin, maybe it's issues with boundaries. Maybe you don't have any boundaries. Maybe people walk all over you. Maybe you've always had your boundary. You know, there could be some, you know, because the skin is a boundary. So sometimes the way the disease shows up in the symbol, it's a symbol to a deeper emotional issue that needs to be addressed.
I love this. This is so amazing. And it's so true. And when I first started learning about that, everything you said, I thought, well, okay, if all I work on are my thoughts, and I do all my healing of past traumas, then I'll be fine. I don't have to worry about anything else, which is not true. So you have to do everything you said. You have to do the right diet. You got to exercise, mental. Okay. Mary says, this was amazing, been in tears, going to talk to an angel guide. Thank you for joining, Mary. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Mary. Yeah, and also we need to do one last thing before, you know, just for completeness. We need to do the somatic work as well. We need to, because often there's the saying that goes, the issue's in the tissue. You know, trauma stays in the body too. We need to shake that trauma up. We need to get it out of the cells. You know, so we have to do the stuff with our head, but we also need to do the body work as well.
I've never heard that issue is in the tissue. I've not heard that. That's good.
Yeah.
Yes. I learned about the link to emotional. I never knew that growing up. I didn't learn that till my mid-30s. And then I guess, I mean, you know, there's stress, but it didn't really get into the childhood trauma and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming. This was very enlightening. I loved it. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. I really enjoyed it anytime. So thank you for inviting me.
Definitely. And I'd love to have you come back as well.
I'd love that. Thank you, Kelly.
Okay. Thanks, guys, for watching so much. I hope you got a lot out of it. And thank you, Colleen.
Thanks a lot. Bye.